What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another nitty gritty sports preview and prediction video. And before I even go on with the rest of this video, if you do hear some chainsaws in the background, I'm sorry. We're getting a couple trees taken out from the backyard, so if you hear saws and everything, I really do apologize. Hopefully my voice kind of overtakes it a little bit so where y'all don't hear it too much. Regardless, though, we still got to get this done. Going out to the West Coast, we got Utah going on the road to Oregon. This is a huge game for the Pac-12 in terms of, well, I can't even say this anymore because Oregon just crapped the bed last week, losing to Washington at home by 3. So that kind of just eliminated them from the playoffs. I think USC is the only team left in the Pac-12 that might have a shot at getting in, but they got to win out. That's for a whole nother video. Utah still has a chance to get in. They got to win out. Obviously, starting with this game, they got to beat Oregon. And then if they win this game, they go and play Colorado next week, which should be an automatic win. Colorado is one of the worst teams in the Power 5. But let's go ahead and get into it. Oregon's 3-point favorites in this game, okay? Oregon's home. This game's going to be played at 10:30 Eastern Time, 7:30 Pacific, so it's going to be a night game in Autzen. And, you know, when you look at this game and you look at home field advantages in the Pac-12, it's really hard to look at that one team that has that true advantage, home field advantage. Oregon might be the only team, maybe USC, and maybe Utah to some degree, that has a home field advantage. I think Oregon does have the best. I think they do draw in the most crowd in terms of filling their stadium to max capacity, and it's going to be the case for this game too. Now, when you take that into account, you got to think of this Utah team, a very veteran Utah team. Cam Rising's been playing there forever. Tavion Thomas, he's been there for a while. There's a lot of experienced guys on this Utah team who, even at the first game of the season, they had to go on the road, play in the swamp. Now, yes, they did lose, but however, that is experience that they can take forward into this game. And this is going to be a huge game. I mean, like I said earlier, it's a win-or-go-home situation. Maybe not for the playoffs, but for the Pac-12 championship, because both teams can still legitimately get in. I really do think Oregon kind of shot themselves in the foot last week. They just couldn't afford that loss in terms of making it to the Pac-12 championship. It was almost, had they have won that game and won this game, I mean, they pretty much would have just stamped themselves right into the Pac-12 title game. But now this is a must-win for the Oregon Ducks. So let's take a look at a couple things. Utah, really, really good defense, okay? It's not like they're a Georgia level or an elite defense or anything along those lines, but this is probably going to be one of the best defenses Oregon has played since that Georgia game. Obviously, Georgia did against Oregon. Completely domination, okay? Bo Nix could do absolutely nothing in that game. And I expect Utah to be able to slow down this Oregon Ducks team, which is going to be huge. So we all know what this Oregon offense is by now. Bo Nix has done a tremendous job after leaving Auburn, going to the Pac-12. Bo Nix has really dominated the Pac-12 and became one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. Oregon has the number 2 scoring offense. They are 19th in passing and number 10th in the nation in running the ball. This is yards per game, that is. Going up against the Utah defense that's really solid. Now, Utah does have a top 25 defense, which is really good, and they're really good at stopping the run as well. And I think that is the number 1 key for this Utah team if they want to beat this Oregon Ducks. You got to make Oregon one-dimensional in some way, shape, or form. Now, Oregon has a great offense, and I've said it before. I don't know how long y'all have been following this channel, but I've said it before. Great offenses, you're not always going to be able to shut down, but you do have to have the ability to be able to slow down those offenses to keep your team in the game, because Utah's not a team, they're not an offense that's built to win shootout games. You know, Utah's more of a traditional, they like to kill a little bit of clock. They have really good players at skill positions. Cam Rising, I think, is really good, and I think Tavion Thomas, the running back, is also really good. And they're going to have to kill some time in this game and really keep that Oregon offense off the field. You know, that is pretty much the number 1 key. Anytime a team plays another team that has a great offense, you have to do everything in your power to make sure that offense does not have the ball for a long period of time. Because if you do that and you give a great offense extra possessions, extra time, they're going to take advantage of it. And if you're a team like Utah who's not built to win these shootout kind of games, I mean, it makes the chance of winning the game almost impossible. So Utah's really going to have to find ways to make Oregon one-dimensional. And Oregon is, you know, going to their defense, this is an Oregon defense that has struggled. Now, Oregon is really good at stopping the run. They're 17th in the nation in yards allowed per game on the ground. So they're more than capable of slowing down Tavion Thomas, who I think is a really good running back. Yes, Tavion Thomas is going to get some yards in this game, but if there's any defense in the Pac-12 that can slow down the run, Oregon would definitely be one of them. Their main weakness is in the passing game, though. Their passing defense has just not been there this year. I want to say they're 127th in yards allowed per game in terms of passing yards, which is not good at all. Cam Rising is more than capable of carving up a bad defense. He might not be the most elite quarterback you're going to see in all of college football. He's not always going to throw for 300, 400 yards a game, but he is smart, and he will get the ball to open receivers if you allow him to. So, you know, if I'm Oregon in this situation, you got to find ways to dial up pressure, okay? I mean, if your secondary is bad, you got to be able to help him out as a defensive coordinator, and obviously everyone knows Dan Lanning came from Georgia. the former defense coordinator over there when they had that elite defense. So Dan Lanning knows that. He knows he's going to have to dial up some pressure. He cannot trust that secondary for a long period of time. These receivers are eventually going to get open. Oregon's secondary is just not there this year. Now, fortunately for Oregon, Utah's strength on offense really isn't the pass. I know Cam Rising, like I just said, he can throw the ball for a lot of yards, but that's just not who he is. He's not an elite passer who's slinging the ball 50, 60 yards downfield more times than not. Those chainsaws are getting really loud. I'm sorry, guys. Utah is really good running the ball, though, and Oregon's going to have to find ways to slow down this running game. Like I said earlier, Oregon's 17th in yards allowed per game on the ground. They can slow down offenses in terms of slowing down the ground attack. And if they do that and they force Utah to get in these 3rd and long situations where it's obvious passing downs, I think Oregon's secondary can do just enough to make some of the plays necessary to get Utah off the field. And if Oregon's defense can give Oregon's offense extra possessions, I think that puts Oregon in the driver's seat to really win this game. Now, this is a preview and prediction video, so I kind of have to make a guess here or prediction of what I think is going to happen. So, like I mentioned earlier, Oregon has probably the best home field advantage in the Pac-12. Yes, Washington did come to Oregon and beat them last week, but I really do think this is going to be a different kind of atmosphere. Crowd does matter, okay, guys? I know I've seen comments all the time saying that the crowd noise doesn't matter, the crowd doesn't put on the pads. After the Georgia-Tennessee game, I made a post on my Instagram talking about the crowd noise, and I even made a tweet about it. Can you all stop with the whole crowd doesn't matter thing? Like, the crowd does matter, especially in games like this where it's a win-or-go-home situation for both teams. The crowd's going to show up, and yes, Utah is a very veteran bunch, but you can't always practice for crowd noise, right? You just either have to play in it or you don't. And yes, Utah has played in a lot of these games where crowd has been a factor, but at the same time, you don't ever fully become immune to the crowd, right? It's always going to affect you regardless of how many games you played in. The crowd's always just going to be there. You're going to hear it. It's going to mess up with communication, which is the number one important thing. And Jalen Hyatt, in that Tennessee wide receiver, he said after the Tennessee-Georgia game, the main reason the offense struggled is because of crowd noise. Because you got to be able to make audibles. You got to be able to make checks. The offensive line has to be able to hear you. Receivers have to get the calls. Crowd noise can have an effect on all of that, and that can really slow down even the best of offenses. We've already seen it this year. I still feel like I'm missing a little bit. I do want to talk a little bit about Oregon's offense. Everyone knows Bo Nix. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about him. I think everyone who's watched college football, even the slightest at this point, knows who Bo Nix is and what he's been doing for the University of Oregon. But I think their running backs don't really get enough credit. Now, Bucky Irving and Noah Whittington are both really great running backs for Oregon. Both of them are averaging 6 yards per carry or more. I don't even want to say Bucky Irving's. I think averaging 7 yards per game. It's either him or Noah Whittington. I can't remember off the top of my head. I don't just read this stuff, I don't read stats and just say it to you guys. I just feel like everyone else does that, but I do look at some stuff, and I do know those guys are really good running backs who average over 6 yards per game, and Utah cannot allow that. They can't allow these big runs. They can't allow 6, 7, 8 yards per gain. They're going to have to find ways to also limit Oregon and make them and put them in obvious passing situations in 3rd and longs, and you cannot let Bo Nix beat you with his legs. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about Bo Nix a lot, but that is the number one thing I think that's made him so dangerous in the Pac-12. The speed in the Pac-12, especially on the defensive end, is not what it is in the SEC. Now, whether you guys like it or not, that's just the reality of it. The SEC there's just more speed down there, especially on the defensive end. Of course, it goes along with physicality as well. The Pac-12 does have some physical teams. Utah is one of those teams that can be very physical on defense and will come up and hit you. But when you play a fast team like Oregon with speed all around, you got to have speedy guys to counter the speed. It's simple as that. Does Utah have the speed to really do that? Well, in 2022, I feel like you have to have speed to have a top defense. Now, Utah does have a top 25 defense, and you don't do that without having speed. So, yes, Utah, I think, is capable of slowing down Bo Nix and not letting him beat them with his legs. That is the number one key. Remember when I said earlier Utah has to make Oregon one-dimensional? You got to either have Bo Nix beat you through the air or someone else is just going to have to beat you. There's no way. If you let Bo Nix run around on you, the game's over, okay? I mean, it's already hard enough to defend this Oregon team as is. Like I said earlier, they have a lot of speed. They have a lot of great running backs that can run for 6, 7, 8 yards a game and then bust one out for 60. This is a hard offense to stop already. You got to find ways to limit Bo Nix on the ground. If he's going to beat you, it's going to have to be through the air. So we got all that out of the way. We got all the stats out of the way. What do I think is going to happen? What is my final prediction? I did see something earlier where a computer model did say Utah has a 51% chance to win this game. Obviously, Oregon has a 49% chance to win. This is a computer model. I don't go off computer models. I go off what I see on film and what matchups look like, because college football really is all about matchups. Oregon's home field advantage, but, sometimes when you have a loss like they did have in that Washington game, sometimes a loss can beat you twice. Oregon losing that game pretty much eliminated them from the playoffs. That's demoralizing. You know, I don't care how good of a season you've had already. Once you get that second loss and you're out of playoff contention, I mean, there's no way you just can forget that, right? Yes, Oregon's still going to play their best. Yes, they're still going to get great effort. And you know, there's still stuff to play for. You still have a Pac-12 title game to play for, which, and you know, Oregon, I think their realistic expectation should have been to make the Pac-12 title game and maybe even win it. Playoffs were kind of exceeding expectations, and they were almost there. So, yes, it's demoralizing. Oregon got eliminated from playoff contention, but they still have a lot to play for, and you're going to get Oregon's best in this game. Now, Utah, they kind of already knew heading into this game that their playoff hopes were over, and all they have left is a Pac-12 title game too. So, I mean, I think Utah they're not coming off an embarrassing loss to a team they really should have beat. I think Oregon should have beat Washington. Yes, Washington's not a bad team, but I think Oregon has been way too good this year, and they're way too talented to lose a game like that, especially at home. So taking that into consideration, let's also keep in mind Utah is also on a 4-game winning streak. They did beat USC a few weeks ago, which was a huge win, and they haven't looked back since. Utah has just owned Oregon the past few times they've met. Yes, it is at Oregon. Oregon does have a good home field advantage, but I just don't know if Oregon's quite there yet. It might have been a little bit easier for me to pick Oregon had they have won last week and still had playoff hopes in front of them. But you just can't ignore the fact that they lost that game. And the players, I know somewhere in their mind, it's demoralizing that they're not going to be making the playoffs, regardless of how good of a season they've had up to this point. When you play a team like Utah who's riding high and you're coming off a tough loss, it's really hard to have confidence in that one team that lost to win the following week, right? Especially against a really good Utah team who I do think matches up well with Oregon. I do think Utah can slow down this Oregon offense. Yes, Oregon's going to put up points, but Utah is capable of putting up points themselves. And if Cam Rising gets going through the air against this terrible Oregon secondary, I don't think this game might not even be competitive. Now, I'm not predicting a blowout by any means. I do think this game is going to be close. Like I said earlier, the line is 3 points in Oregon's favor. Usually 3 points goes to the home team when it comes to betting, so this is really kind of a pick 'em 50-50 game. Even the bettors really don't even know what's happening in this game. So, I mean, I have to go one way or the other. Yes, Oregon can win this game, but I do think Utah just matches up a little bit better. I think they have a little more stability in certain areas. I mean, they've had a coach that's been there forever. They have, you know, veteran quarterback in Cam Rising. Bo Nix is a veteran quarterback too, but new team. You guys get what I'm saying. I don't have to go in much further in that. I feel like I've repeated myself multiple times in this video over multiple topics. With that being said, I'm taking Utah, and they're covering the 3 points. But that's going to be it for this video, guys. I know a lot of Oregon fans are probably not going to like what I said in this video. Take it for a grain of salt, okay? It's like I said, it's a 50-50 game. Oregon can win this game, and I would not be surprised. And Utah can win this game, I'm not going to be surprised. I mean, if you want to come in here and argue and say Oregon's a better team and Oregon's going to win this game, go ahead. I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm really not. I mean, I truly think both teams have a 50-50 chance of winning this game. Either way it goes, I'm not going to be surprised. But let me know down below in the comment section of what you guys think. Also, if you haven't already, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe and hit the notification bell. All those things help this channel out tremendously. I don't know if I mentioned it yet, but Aiden is sick, and I'm hoping we get him back either later this week or next week. I might have to do another preview prediction by myself this week, but I'll keep you guys updated on the community post. If you haven't been checking us out in the community post, please be sure to do. I've been doing a lot of updates on there so you guys know what should be coming, and I'm also doing a lot of polls on there to kind of get you guys engaged, and I want to get some interaction with you guys too, so feel free to hit the polls, leave comments on below on the polls as well. But I'll see you guys in the next video.